Okay, guys, so welcome everyone. It's good to be here. Good to see all of you. Just before we start the webinar, I just want to say that this webinar has been organized for the weekly fasting group. It's a very big WhatsApp group of individuals from virtually all over the world. And we have this common denominator of fasting once a week at a certain time between Friday and Saturday every week, week after week, and cultivating this habit. Some people do it for health reasons, other people do it for spiritual reasons or for the discipline reasons. And we have a wide variety of backgrounds of people in terms of their spiritual background, in terms of their dietary background. So it's really open-minded group, no particular agenda other than just to develop this habit of fasting once a week and be together and share our ideas about health, about spirituality, about self-development, about interesting lifestyles, etc. So if you are watching this video later on and those ideas appeal to you, you would like to cultivate this habit of fasting, then you're welcome to contact me by WhatsApp. You will find my WhatsApp number below the video. My name is Arik, and you just send me your name and your request to join the fasting group, and I will happily add you. And today, guys, we have Karen Newman. She's going to enlighten us about very interesting process and its applications in our life and in our fasting and in our diets and in life in general. And we have Alva, who is going to host her. So over to you, Alva.
Thank you so much, Arik. Happy Friday, everyone. So as Arik mentioned, we have our beloved Karen Newman, who is a community member, speaking today to us, and she's going to be talking to us about the presence process, emotions, fasting, and food addiction. And of course, Karen, I hope that the first question on everybody's mind is, tell us more and what brought you to the presence process.
Okay, cool, lovely. Okay, so what did bring me to the presence process? I was fasting, and one of the teachers that I was following at the time, she actually recommended it. That's what brought me to the presence process. And if I'm honest, this is now I've done the process now. This is the 4th time of going through the whole process, and the first few times, I would say, as they generally say, you just go deeper and deeper each time you go through the process. So I think the first time that I actually did it, to be honest with you, I had so much resistance, and I really don't think I understood it it's just gone deeper and deeper each time that I've done the process. So I wanted to bring it to the group because this time I'm doing it for the 4th time. It's been a process of nearly 4 years as well, because he recommends in the book that you can repeat it once you go through the process, to have a gap of a minimum of 3 weeks, where you basically just allow it to take its integration, to take its course. You still carry on doing the breathing exercise, which I'm going to share with you shortly. And I'm just going to move because my dog, come on, Sky, up you get. So you basically take a mandatory break of 3 weeks between redoing the process. And like I say, that's to allow it to take its course and do it, serve you energetically, obviously, as well as emotionally, mentally, and physically. So I took that break after the first one, carried on. He recommends carrying on doing the breathing exercise, and then I allowed intuition and inspiration to actually to motivate me. At the time that I finished it, I really didn't feel motivated to do it at all again, but lo and behold, I think it was 6 to 8 months later, it called me again, and so I did it again. And then it was another year before the next time that I was called to do it again, and then it's been about 18 months from when I did it that time to this time. So, and it's interesting, obviously, how your life just takes on a new dimension each time that you do it. So anyway, so what I did, yeah, go on then. I'll let
So before you do the practice with us, I'd like to back up just a little bit, and then have you tell us a little bit about Michael Brown. You know what I mean? Because we're talking about a process that nobody knows what it is, and I know that it's experiential, but just a little bit of background maybe about Michael Brown, and then if you would, just a little bit about his journey that brought him to the presence process, and then we'll go into the experiential.
Yeah, cool, good. I'm happy you're getting me organized. So Michael Brown's journey was he came from a place of sickness. It was called Hodgkin's disease, which was really rare. It was something like 2% of the population. It probably wasn't even that much. It was something ridiculously low, but it was really debilitating. He wasn't old at all. I think from it doesn't say anything about ages, but reading into it, I would say he maybe was in his late 30s to 40s, and like I say, it was he was actually a musician, and so he used to tour around, and then because of this illness, it basically completely meant he couldn't do his work anymore. His marriage fell apart as well, and he went through all sorts of doctors. He started the conventional doctors, no answers. Well, they actually diagnosed and said there was nothing they could do, just go and get comfortable and be ready to die type thing. and then he then ended up going down holistic path, and trying all modalities. He's a Reiki master, and he's acupuncture master as well. So he went down all those avenues searching for an answer, which in the end it just got to the point where he realized that it wasn't going to be outside. It had to be an inner journey, because he'd searched everything that he could possibly search outside of him, and he then realized it had to be an inner journey, and that's it. He basically then went out and he did all sorts of ayahuasca and that type of thing, the drugs that take you into a different place, and he realized that the energy, once he got himself into the higher energy levels, that his pain diminished, and that overall he felt better. So he went into he was a fire chief in some Indian group, and he really went round some unconventional routes to find the answers, and in the end, like I say, that in the end it led him back to, he wanted an answer that everybody could follow, that you wouldn't need some weird tea or something to take you off into different levels
yes
of yourself. So he wanted a practical whatever religion, and that's the other beauty of this system, is there's no religious no religions, there's no biases it's completely neutral, it's just a process, and there's no biases there at all, which gives it its plus too. So does that answer it?
Thank you for that. Yeah. I would just say, for anybody that's just joining the call, that Michael Brown is the creator of the presence process, which Karen is going to briefly walk us through in a moment here. He had what was called Horton syndrome, and which was a rare, as she mentioned, illness, if you will. And the medical industry basically told him he had to live that way, and it was really no way to live. He was having constant headaches. And then he went on, somewhere I read that he called it a 9-year odyssey of, as she said, pursuing all different healing modalities, from plant medicines to energy and all other things. And then this process came to him, I guess, as a result of his 9-year journey. And it's something that is, it's interesting that he calls it process. I'd love to know why he calls it process, if you know, but it doesn't matter. Because for me, it seems like a practice. And as Karen said, I love that you mentioned that it's a practice or process that when practiced, I would say, or when used, can benefit us in so many ways. But the biggest thing I find is just gratitude and peace with the moment. Like there's just, I can just be with whatever. And I like something else that you just said too, that and I think I heard you just say this, that basically, like, it's not attached to any, like, it's like you said, that he wanted something that anybody and everybody could do to have like greater ease, greater health, or all of those things. And so would you say the teacher that shared it with you before you share the process with us, that's why they shared the presence process with you? Like, what brought you to that suggestion, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at based on your topic today. That's why I was wondering that, that you're going to talk to us about emotions, fasting, and food addiction. Were you in the middle of food addiction at the time, or you were fasting and someone shared it with you because they thought it would be a helpful addition to your fasting?
Yeah, I would say that was the answer. Was at that particular point, I didn't see the emotional attachment to food in the way that I do now. But obviously my teacher at the time, she was obviously further on, and she was realizing how much emotions and addictions and that type of thing would affect us going down the line. So it was something she introduced, and because she recommended it, I thought, well, it must be good, as you do.
Okay.
and so so I just bought it entered it on that first time, just to see what it was all about, really, just out of interest and intrigue. But yeah, just before we move on too quickly, I'm not sure if we've made it clear that the presence process is a process that basically brings us into eternal presence. And Michael's experience, and obviously my experience as well, is eternal presence isn't just another way to breathe. Eternal presence is a form of a being, is like, it isn't a form of, it is actually a presence. So it's an energetic presence that you bring into your experience which activates, which integrates, it is probably your the higher vibration of you, but it isn't just, I don't know how the words, but I'll say it how he says it here.
So
The presence, shall I just read it? Just this sentence. Yeah, so the presence process functions from the premise that what we authentically are isn't mind, we are eternal presence. Okay, he does actually go on to say, within the context of the presence process, mind is the vehicle through which we interact with our transient human experience. It's composed of physicality, our body, mentality, our thoughts, and emotionality, so our emotional states. In other literature, when people talk about their mind, they're generally referring only to their thoughts. So that's just to bring that clarity there. So the whole purpose of the presence process, and again, like you say, it could be called a practice because it's something you do once, you won't ever stop doing the presence process once you it's a lifetime of different
Yeah, it's a way
experiences
of
of going
living.
deeper. And
Yeah, it's a way of living.
definitely. So
Yeah.
so I think that's probably just made that a bit. I just wanted to make that. So the whole purpose of the process is that you learn. At the moment, most of our time is spent in the mental, in our mind, unless you've done a lot of work on yourself, which again in this group it could be a whole different experience. But certainly for me, most of my life has been spent, focused in the physical, very much in my head, and it has been a process to transition myself, which is what this book, what this process has done for me, is actually, along with fasting, because it's interesting that it's coincided with, as my life, who knows what came first, the presence process or my diving into fasting, but anyway, so I just want to make that clear, that it's a process to bring us present.
Appreciate.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was actually going there. I wanted you to kind of give us an idea of that. There's been just a couple of little comments in the chat. How about, before we go any further, if Karen, she's graciously offered to give us like a 5-minute experience, right? Because we're also like, we're talking about something that really is more an experiential and, as we said, a way of living, if it's something that resonates with you moving forward. And then afterwards, Karen, you can talk about some of the benefits that you seem to have experienced from doing it, specifically as it relates to fasting and addiction, or just, generally. But for the moment, why don't we just get comfortable? And most of everyone has their mics on mute. I'm going to mute mine, and Karen, you take over for us and take us on this 5-minute journey. Thank you.
Okay. So the breathing practice is an integral part of the whole process, and you do it basically twice a day, for 15 minutes a day. And it's different. I've followed a lot of breathing practices, like I do a lot of yoga, so pranayama. I followed Patrick McEwen and his oxygen process, and then more recently James Nestor with his breathing processes. And I realized that this process is very different and almost antagonistic to what they recommend in these breathing, in these more, what I'd call more recent breathing practices that they encourage you. But the purpose, and like I say, the purpose of the breathing in the presence process isn't more oxygen. It isn't about, peace and relaxation. It's about presence. It's about bringing you out of the mental realm and into the presence moment. So it's very distinctive in that respect. And the way that it works is it's non-stop breathing, and you listen to your breath. And the reason it's so important, and my personal experience has been that I literally, if I am not totally conscious and totally in the moment with my breathing, I will drop off and go into my unconsciousness, which is an experience of falling asleep. It feels like you've fallen asleep, but it's not. You've just gone into unconsciousness. So it's very specific, and I do it. He recommends it as nose breathing, and so I will demonstrate it now. And are you going to time it, Alva, or are you going to time it?
I'll time it for you and message. Yeah, I'll time it. Cool. I'll use a timer, and I'll put a bell. Then that way people will be able to hear it.
Perfect. And then generally what he suggests is we'll do 5 minutes today. You would normally do 15. And then what he suggests is just, and we can do like 30 seconds to a minute, but just to then just come back from the breathing and just feel what comes up for you, before going back into the noisiness of day-to-day living. So I'll demonstrate then now. And it's basically you just breathe like this. So it's, in fact, I wouldn't do it out through my mouth. So it's, is that, can you hear that, Alva? Can you hear me doing that?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes,
can you hear me doing that? Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, so there'll be a bell to start you off, Karen. So just give it a minute here. Let me just hit save and then start.
Okay. And feel free to join in, obviously. And what I've actually forgotten to say is that as a part of that process, you actually say, I am here now in this. On the in breath, it's I, out breath am, in breath here, out breath here now, in breath in this. So I'll say it a couple of times out loud, but you generally would do that in your head. So it's, and I probably can't do all of it. So it's, I am here now in this. Yeah, I can't do all of it. I have to do it in my head. I am here now in this. 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 I am here now in this.
Thank you, Karen.
Cool.
Yeah. And I know there's a
Oh.
video of that without someone talking on YouTube. We can post that in the group later if anyone wants, as well as, yeah, anything else Karen wants to share. So Karen, what benefits have you experienced around addiction and fasting as a result of this practice? They might be interesting from when you started 4 years and bring us up to now, if possible.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, if I'm honest, it's more recent times that that I have. It's been an overall change of my experience. It hasn't. I haven't used it specifically for anything, but I wanted to talk in this talk particularly about the addictions and affliction stage section in this book, because it's very relevant to what we all go through. But before I do that, I wanted to just play a part from a section from the webinar that Michael Brown did, really just to explain. It explains clearly from Michael's perspective, and it's obviously how he did it in his seminars when he was touring around the countryside promoting the presence process. But it's that there's what he uses as the pathway of awareness, and the 7 we are all emotionally imprinted. So I just wanted to play a section, assuming it comes over well, and let me know if it doesn't, from the seminar, so that everybody can hear the new perspective really on our emotional imprinting. So I'm going to play it now.
So that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here tonight. It's all good. There is a path into our experience of this world, which in the presence process we call the pathway of awareness. And we use this pathway every day of our lives without even realizing it. We're actually unconscious to it until we're made conscious of it. And this pathway can be best seen by observing a child as it enters the world. A child first cries, is emotional, then begins to communicate, and then becomes a physically independent being. So a child doesn't pop out the womb and start walking around and then speaking and then crying. There's a specific order in which this occurs, a specific way the awareness moves through. And it's from emotional to mental to physical. Now, this pathway can be seen in a larger way in the world, and the world acknowledges this pathway, in which we can call the 7-year cycle. And so for the first 7 years we're in the world, we are emotional beings. We're called children. Then at around 7 years, we enter some sort of schooling, and we get very into mental activity about communicating, reading, writing. And then around 14, we go through what's called puberty. We go through a physical transformation in our bodies, or more likely a physical activation. And we suddenly become very aware of the physical world and our place in it. And that continues until we're 21, and then we have a big party because we've arrived. It's our 21st. So this cycle is again going from emotional to mental to physical. Now, there was a time when we were not completely disconnected to this pathway. So when a child was born, it would be given a name. And then after about 7 years on this earth, it would be given another name. And then after another 7 years, it would be given another name. And then around 21, it would be given its final name. Because we knew that that being was going to go through certain changes. The name would reflect that. Not only that, but at those naming periods, we would do rites of passage to acknowledge that there was a change. And so the child's activity or situation within the community would change. So up until 7, the child was allowed to run free and be spontaneous. And then at 7 years old, the child was required to start doing certain activities. And then at 14, the activities were changed. There were responsibilities added. And then at 21, the being was required to now take their place in the community. We don't have rites of passage anymore, although we still go through them. That's what the 21st birthday party is now. It's an unconscious rite of passage. And even you will see that teenagers today, at some point they'll begin tattooing and piercing and all sorts of things. That again is a rite of passage, because often the rite of passage involved marking the body. So once we enter the physical aspect of our experience, which is around 14, we mark our body. We're entering a body experience, a physical experience. So this pathway of awareness actually begins in the womb. It begins as what we may call vibrational awareness. What is happening to us as we come in and go through these cycles, which is not apparent to us when we live in a time-based paradigm, is we're going through an experience of imprinting. And imprinting works like this. When the child is in the womb, and the child enters the womb around 2 months into pregnancy. So the child is in the womb for roughly 7 months. So the vehicle is first prepared, the consciousness enters. So the 7-year cycle begins in the womb as a 7-month period. While we are in the womb, whatever happens to our mother, whatever experience our mother goes through, whatever is happening around her in her experience will be accurately reflected in her body. If, for example, while I'm in the womb, my mother goes through a traumatic experience, that traumatic experience will be directly reflected in the way that my mother's blood is pumping, in the way that she's moving her body, in the way she's speaking. Everything about her will reflect that. And for me, being in the womb as consciousness, I will experience that vibrationally. They will just come to me as vibrations, because all of those things are vibrations in the body. Then, as I'm born into this world and I enter the emotional, my experience is that of energy in motion. So a child, everything is moving. I don't know if you've watched a child. Everything's moving because they can't name it. We only name something when it matters. And the moment we name something, it does matter. In other words, it becomes material. And usually the first thing we name is our mother. That's the first thing that really matters to us. And matter and mother are actually the same word. So until something matters to me, until it materializes, it moves like energy in motion. And my experience of the world is that of being in an energetic field. And whatever happens in that energetic field is imprinted on what I would call my energy in motion body. When I enter schooling or increased mental activity at around the age of 7, I then start to learn language. And language is taught magic. The first thing we do is we're taught how to spell words. Because words are the roots of all spells. And once we can spell words, we learn to put them in sentences. And once we learn those sentences, they sentence us. Once we learn sentences, then we can get told stories. And it's usually his story that we get told. And his story is always the story of the winner. The winner always writes his story. And the winner always lies. Anyway, that's beside the point. The fact is, we start converting our energetic, emotional experience into a conceptual one. We create our belief systems about ourselves and the world we're in. Then around 14, we suddenly become very physically aware of the world and physically aware of ourselves. And you can see this transition happen in children as they move into being teenagers. Before the transition, we see someone kissing, we go, ugh. After the transition, we see someone kissing and we go, what's that about? Complete change. And then we turn 21, and by the time we turn 21, we are literally transfixed by the physical world. We're in a trance, and it is fixed upon the physical, through which we interact mentally. Now, what's happening as we're going through this cycle, which is initially hard for us to see, is that we are being imprinted with information, and information is to assist us to move in formation. We're being printed with information that carries our life destiny, or what we're here to do. Or maybe in the East, they would call it karma. When you deal with your karma, you get much karma. So we're being printed with our destiny. And the way it looks is like this. My mother and father have a fight. And he says, I've had enough of this. I'm walking out. And he abandons her. And she goes through abandonment and he's angry. That vibration is imprinted into the vibrational body, into my vibrational body. Then what will happen is that almost exactly 7 years later, say when I'm 6 years old, maybe at that point, my mother and father will actually get divorced and he will leave for good. And my mother will go through abandonment and he'll be all angry and she'll be all hurt. But this time, that experience will be an emotional one to me. It will imprint my emotional body with a particular pattern of energy in motion, particular way my energy works, moves. Then, say at 13 years old, 7 years later, I have a best friend in the neighborhood who I'm very attached to. And suddenly my best friend and their family move out of the neighborhood. And I will go through an experience of abandonment and maybe even anger about it. But this time, I will experience that conceptually. In other words, as a result of that experience, I will tell myself things about myself and about the world I live in. And then, say at 20 years old, exactly 7 years later, I'm deeply in love, I'm engaged, I'm going to get married, and the day before, she just runs out on me. Now, my attention, my awareness will be in a very physical place. It'll be about her, what she's doing, about the wedding that's been messed up, about the events in a very, very physical place. But what is not immediately seen is that it's the exact same event occurring over and over again. Why it looks different to us is because by the time we're 21, we are physically transfixed by this world. And most of our attention is on the physical. And the thing about the physical is it has this sleight of hand in which it can change all the time. In fact, it does. The physical is changing all the time. So every time something happens to me, it looks like something new, right? It's a different event, different circumstance, something new. But if I go down deeper, if I allow myself to sink into my emotional body, into the feeling, what I will discover is that the feeling when I got ditched at the altar, and the feeling when my best friend left the neighborhood, and the feeling when my parents got divorced is identical. So really nothing's changed. It's a repeating cycle. And by the time I'm 21, whatever that dysfunction is, from this point of view, we can call it a dysfunction. From another point of view, we can call it a gift, but we've got to get to that point of view first. But from this point of view, we call it a dysfunction. But that dysfunction has now been imprinted vibrationally into my vibrational body. It's been imprinted emotionally into my emotional body. It's been imprinted mentally into my mental body. And it's been imprinted physically into my physical awareness, into my physical body and into my physical circumstances. So now I can work with it. I know where it is I can work with it. We don't look at it like that. But a lot of people will say, oh, it's my karma. They're having a hard time because it's my karma. But if you ask them, where is your karma? This karma that's happening to you, where is the karma? Where is the karma? It's actually stored within our body as an imprinted pattern. Now, what happens is that 7-year cycle continues and continues every 7 years. By 28, I'm supposed to have qualified at something and met the person I'm going to marry. By 35, I'm supposed to be married, a couple of kids, getting on in the job. And so it goes on. There are these cyclic expectations. And if I look at each 7-year cycle, what I will realize is that the same thing has been happening over and over and over again. But in order to see that, I have to be able to look not with these eyes, nor with the eyes of the head, the mental, but with the eyes of the heart. And the eyes of the heart will tell me something's going on because I will say things like, why does this always keep happening to me? Right? You've heard that. You've heard yourself say it too, probably. So by the time we are adults, we are operating in the world in a particular way. Because we are fixed by the world, we believe that the physical world is the cause of what's going on. We behave that way. The world behaves that way. Our parents behave that way. Our politicians behave that way. Business people behave that way. Doctors behave that way. Everyone behaves that way. That the physical world is the cause. For example, it works like this. I have this pen in my hand. If I throw this pen across the room, what the world's example tells me is that if I want to change the way I'm throwing that pen, I need to move it around over here on the floor if I want to change the way I'm throwing it. In other words, if I don't like my job, then I need to get another job. If I don't like my partner, I need to find another relationship. If I don't like the country I'm living in, I need to move somewhere else. And so I do that, but we know what happens. 3 months into the new position or into the new relationship, or once I've bought the property, settled down, and this is the place, the same stuff starts to happen. But we don't recognize it because we're looking at the physical world. But it begins to get uncomfortable again, although it's different people I'm working with, a different relation, neighborhood that I'm in, but the same discomfort starts to arise. We can't see it though, because the discomfort is stored in the emotional body. The emotional body is the causal point of our experience while we're in this world. So what I mean by that, if I want peace, there's 3 ways I can go about it. I can tell you all to sit still and shut up. That's what our politicians do, right? Or I can behave like the UN. If I want peace, I can go, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about peace. Let's get together and talk about peace. But that's not going to give me peace either, right? Because I'm never going to be at peace until I feel at peace, because peace is a feeling. It's not a mental concept, and nor is it a physical circumstance. The feeling is the causal point of my experience. Why? Because of the pathway of awareness. Actually, the causal point of my experience is this area here, the vibrational. But as yet, none of us speak vibrational. Does anyone here speak vibrational? I need a few lessons. Okay, so we do speak the language of the emotional body. That's the language of feeling, to feel. We do speak the language of the mental body. That's thinking, understanding, and when we analyze, which is one of my favorite words. And we do speak the language of the physical body, which is sensation. So if we want to go to the causal point of our experience and adjust that, unless we adjust the feeling content, we never have any success. So many of us have tried that. For example, if we have something physical going on, we'll go and move the pen around on the floor. For example, if I have a sickness that's causing me symptoms, and symptom is also an interesting word. Symptom means sometime, symptom, piece of time that's unintegrated in my emotional body. And normally when I'm dealing only with symptoms, because there's times when I need to deal with symptoms. If I'm about to lose this physical body, I better go and deal with those symptoms. But if I only deal with the symptoms, what I'm normally going to be doing is sedating or controlling something. And whatever it is, it'll pop up somewhere else. Push it down here, over there. Push it down here and over there. Maybe I can go a bit deeper than that, and I can deal with what's going on to me mentally. Talk to somebody about it. Talk. And it costs me a lot of money to talk. So I can go and do that too, which is helpful. But unless I go to the emotional body, which is the causal point of my experience, and feel what's going on, I'm going to have no success. Now, the thing about the emotional body, because it's the place we were until we were 7, a good metaphor for the emotional body is a child, is that it's a child. And it's funny, if you ask people what they're feeling, they will go, I'm feeling betrayed. Betrayed is not a feeling. It's not a word a child would use. Betrayed is an adult concept. No child who's having an upset goes, I just feel betrayed. So what happens is, at some point, emotional body awareness gets shut off. And we think we can feel, but really what we're calling feeling is drama that we conceptualize. So if we want to make any changes in our experience, our job is to go to the causal point of the experience. And to do that is to be able to feel. Now, the feeling body works very simply. If I'm standing with my eyes closed and I fall forwards and I hit the ground, hitting the ground is a symptom, a physical symptom. And if you try that, you'll find it's a very physical symptom. It's a symptom of not being able to feel that I'm out of balance. Simply that. Now, if I reinstall the ability to feel, just simply that, and I feel how out of balance I am, just through feeling, I bring myself back into balance. Just through feeling. There's no thinking required. I don't have to go, I'm 16 degrees out of balance. I've been this way for 4.5 days, and now I'm going to come back 2.5 degrees per minute, and then end up at 0 degrees. If I go into that place, which is the mental place, then I will fall over. So feeling is healing. The only thing is that our emotional body awareness has been shut down. We don't function in this world through felt perception. If we do, we couldn't do half the things we did. What felt perception is functioning from the heart center. In other words, it's being able to feel the consequences of my thoughts, words, and deeds before I even put them into action. Now, if I can feel the consequences of my thoughts, words, and deeds before I even put them into play, I don't need anyone to tell me how to behave. I don't even need any law. Where there is love, there is no law. Because my own feelings will guide my behavior, because I won't want to do things that hurt myself. What the presence process is, it's a procedure, it's a process that we use to re-enter our emotional body awareness.
Okay, So I just really wanted for him to say it, because he'll say it a lot more clearer than I would. But what I wanted to do, having him now explained what the pathway of awareness is, the 7-year cycle, and of course emotional imprinting and how we become emotional imprinted, I really ideally wanted to open it up to the floor really at this point, and ask anybody if they've got any questions about that, about how we get imprinted, and about how our physical, emotional, mental and vibrational, how it all works. I just wanted to see if anybody who's listening in the group have got any questions, obviously, and yourself, Alva.
Before you open it up for questions, how about you give us an example of what that looks like for you this time around? Remember you were saying that, I remember you saying that how it's impacted you this time around, that your 4th time practicing it as it relates to addiction, food, and fasting. So can you talk about maybe the emotional imprint that you observed, and then how this process helped you with that? And then we'll open the floor up to questions, because, you know, like, that just gives us, he gives us context, okay, but then you actually give us a living example, if you don't mind.
Yeah, okay. So, oh my God, where do I start? I did actually make some notes about what I've been going through personally, just so that I could highlight them.
Or I could break it up into 3 segments. Did you notice that there was an addiction around food?
Oh my God, yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, that. So okay, so I as far as my imprinting, so what I've noticed this time is more that I can be that I am much more present, and that yeah, I would say everything is sort of magnified, and I can actually I never used to understand what he called felt perception. I couldn't get it. It was like, well, is it a feeling? What's felt perception? And I've realized that felt perception is going into the silence, internally into the silence, and feeling and listening. So there's like an energy that's there, obviously, and we just, in our busyness and our mind chatter and everything, we just cover it over. But by going into the silence, and the way I've done that this time is I've actually had not only fasting days on a Friday, but I've actually had complete not doing days on a Friday. And that's basically meant no social media, no coming onto these talks, no nothing on on a Friday, literally not so much from 12 o'clock, but I do the whole day. So the whole day I literally don't listen to anything, don't listen to any talks. And that's allowed me to go in and actually feel that experience that's inside, that, like you say, words are no way going to describe it. But what it has allowed me, when I've been able to do that, is it's given me insights, and insights, and and ahas is basically what probably people would hear of it. Michael always terms it as insights, and it particularly around the 7-year cycle and the pathway of awareness. It basically, he says that you experience, basically, when you go to the very core of that fear and that, and the anger and that upset and that sadness, when you go to the very core and you go back far enough, and basically that's what he does, is you go back. So you basically, I'm experiencing fear in this moment, and I go into myself, into that place, listening and feeling, and just into that stillness and that silence. and I feel what that feels like, and I can feel that fear just in my, and where is it in your body? And then and when did I last feel that before this experience? Now, when did I feel that? And my dog, I've got Joey, one of my dogs, when I take him out for a walk, he just creates this fear in me, because he goes running everywhere, and he will chase, he will find wildlife, and and he just creates in me this instability, this fear, and and like this very it's just a horrible feeling of like insecurity, and ultimately it's obviously fear, anger, grief. There's a whole, it's a whole mixture. But I asked, so what does this, what was the last time that I felt like this? And it takes your mind immediately takes you back to the next time, at the next instance. Well, it actually took me right the way back to my dad. And when I was a child, my dad was, the only way I can describe it was sort of schizophrenic, where he could be loving and kind one minute, and then he could be like just completely out of the blue. He could be just so, just, he would hit us, he would just be a different person. So I grew up with this uncomfortable, I never knew how my dad would be around me. Sometimes he would be lovely and funny, other times he would be violent and abusive. And so I realized that feeling went all the way back there. And then what I did was I then spent 10 or 15 minutes, and you use the mental body to actually bring that feeling back up. So maybe when I'm walking my dog, I couldn't necessarily sit there for 10 minutes and actually feel that, really feel it and watch it. And it actually will move as you process it. Those feelings move inside of you. And well, he would never say to you to look for freedom from it, but it moves and you just feel a freedom from that fear, a freedom from that feeling. And so I've been able to do that. I've been doing he does a 40-day process where every day you sit with a certain resonance. And oh my God, I can't tell you. And the biggest thing, and again, I haven't been looking for a change, but my dog has changed. The behavior has changed. He's now walking by my side on a walk, from being this wayward dog for so many years to the point where I used to change. I would decide where I was going to live, or sometimes I worked at my jobs, and I would decide whether I would take a job or not take a job based on whether or not it would be suitable for me to have the dog there. It would be quiet, and that he wouldn't, that it would be safe for me to have him. Where now I actually, that particular instance, which is probably why it's come up for me to talk about. But this week, it's actually given me this sense of freedom that, oh my God, for all this time I've been worrying about him, and always so conscious of where I can live because of him. It's given me this sense of freedom that I haven't got to worry about that anymore. That dog is, he's just a different dog. So anyway, so it's not an addiction one, an addiction talk, but I'm going to move into addiction.
I was just going to ask,
once we've opened it up for people to
difference as a result of practicing, have you noticed a difference in your relationship with food and your relationship with fasting? And if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat or just raise your hand, and we'll move right into that. Yeah. But while we're giving them a chance to type or raise their hand, have you noticed any difference in the way in which you eat or fast as a result of the practice, and the difference before the practice, maybe?
Yeah, I would say the difference for me is that before I knew the presence process, the whole idea of fasting was actually impossible for me. I actually tried to fast in my previous, before having the presence process in my life, and I got to lunchtime, got to like 12 o'clock, and and would give in. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't, my mind was busy, everything was just against it, and I would just cave. So whereas I would actually say now, and every time I've done the presence process, obviously bearing in mind I was actually working with a girl that was a juicing and fasting specialist who was juicing and fasting, but before I actually did my first process. But every time, like now, well, I'm now fasting for 48 hours at least twice a week, effortlessly, and my eating is down to I have one meal a day, and more often than not that's fruit. I have in recent times I was really strict with just fruit, until Marcus Witt obviously did his talks back in October, and he said that if you fancy, if you're craving something, have it, because the whole. So I've actually done that, and I've actually not seen any detriment at all. Well, I just don't like it. so but if I've had that food, if I've there was a stage where I wanted to crisps. I hadn't had crisps in probably 6 or 7 years, but for some reason I had a craving for crisps. So I thought, I'm going to have some crisps. So I had crisps, and like I say, it wasn't a pleasant sensation at digesting, but it effortlessly came out the other end. So, but yeah, I've ate other things. I'm not going to go into all the things because I don't want to. We're all fasting, so the last thing we want to talk about is food.
Yeah,
but yeah. So what I would say is, every time I've done the process, and it's not just obviously about it's not just about the fasting and my eating, but my whole life has changed. Like just the way I interact with life. And again, a big part of the presence process is from reaction to responsive, rather than reacting to life, which again is like, with food and cravings and things, the first thing you do if you're in reactive mode is you listen to what's going on in your mind and you go and take it out the fridge. Whereas when you're in responsive, you actually take a step back and think, is this really what I want to do? Is this actually for the better of my body? You actually get that space, which is what which is really what the presence process is about. It's about creating that space in you that you are present enough and that you can respond to your life rather than react to the mental stories that are going on and the obviously which all comes from that emotional charge that's underneath those stories, that's underneath those physical reactions. So yeah. So did anybody need any clarity on any of the 7?
I don't see any questions in the chat.
7-year cycle.
I don't see any questions in the chat, and I don't see any hands raised for anybody who wants to ask a question. If you do,
so
you can either.
Yeah, if anyone.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you said you had something about addictions you wanted to share with us.
I would like to, because he has got a whole section in this book about addiction and affliction, which he calls, it's the same thing, and I've highlighted certain sections in here. So I just wanted to, and everyone's clear on the emotional charge. So the emotional charge is actually that the underlying current that again, even up to and including the third time of me doing this process, I still couldn't feel that underlying current. I still, and I couldn't put together a lot of what he said in the book. But it's like I say, I didn't realize that everything that happens in my life is actually a reflection of what's going on, internally, that I'm not seeing from an inner basis, that I need that outer reflection because of where I'm at. But this time, that's all been crystal clear. You know, like I say, I've been able to see things that I had never been able to see. Anyway, I'm going to talk a bit about the addiction. So he talks about self-medication, which is sedation and control. Well, that is the sedation and control from our perspective is the food cravings, and our caving in to those food cravings, or yeah, that's the sedation and control, which is a consequence of the charged emotion that's underpinning our day-to-day existence. Okay, that was established in our in the womb, or certainly in that very early childhood, that we've then just throughout our life numbed. I would say I've used the word numbed. Okay, so so I'm going to read the parts that I've highlighted. By not entertaining habitual or addictive behavior, we instantly discover the felt identity of the charged emotion. So it's that, you know, when you're sitting down and there's the words, the stories going around in your head that you need this food, or you know, I can't tell you what the stories are for everybody else's head, but it's the stories that are going on. So by not entertaining habitual or addictive behavior, we instantly discover the felt identity of the charged emotion that lies beneath our habits and addictions. Okay, so the felt state that erupts from abstinence reveals the nature and intensity of the charged emotion that's driving our self-medication. Our self-medication can be anything. Okay, addictions, which are a form of self-medication, are energetically implanted in our field through vibrational, emotional, mental, and physical imprinting. Integrating charged emotion is the only authentic causative treatment for addiction. For addiction, because any self-medicating habit is an effect of an internal emotional predicament. Is that clear, Alva? Couldn't get clearer than that, huh? Yeah, I can read it again. Addictions, which are a form of self-medication, are energetically implanted in our field through vibrational, emotional, mental, and physical imprinting. Integrating charged emotion is the only authentic causative treatment for addiction, because any self-medicating habit is an effect of an internal emotional predicament. Quitting self-medicating behaviors without integrating the associated emotional charge is ineffectual and accomplishes nothing. The extent to which we integrate charged emotion is what separates those who are authentically in charge of the quality of their experience from those who are carrying a charge. So the carrying a charge is the that compulsiveness that, you know, that takes you to do what you don't want to do, that manifests in their experience. So anyone carrying a substantially charged emotion sooner or later exhibits physical, mental, and emotional drama. They also entertain habits and addictions, self-medicating behaviors established as a means of sedation and control. Addictions and afflictions both are outer manifestations of an unintegrated charge within the emotional body. The presence process is efficient in instructing us how to integrate the causality of addictions and afflictions, no matter how long we have entertained them and how acutely we have allowed them to colour our experience. It instructs us how to enter an ongoing inner journey toward complete emotional integration, which gradually leads us beyond the manifestation of these outer experiences. So again, what I just said about my own personal experience is it takes you beyond, though. They don't even come into, you know, the past things that would have caused you, well, like for my experience. So my experience, it's not just oh, I've stopped having a craving for crisps, or I've stopped having a craving for chocolate, my whole experience now has changed, in that my fasting is easy. Yeah, go on.
Okay. Can we break that down into steps? So there's a question in the chat that says, can you please elaborate on what Mr. Brown's approach to control a craving for food? So from what I heard you read, that trying to control it would be from the outside in. So if you had, before you got to this place where you are just this second, or just this time, when you had when a craving for food came up, how did you apply the presence process to it? Can you walk us through that?
So no, that hasn't actually been my experience, in that my experience has been a bigger picture, in that the cravings haven't really come up. Like, again, I went through this, but my whole experience has completely changed. So instead of so I went from not being able to fast at all to actually being able to actually being able to fast as often as I want, whenever I want. And like I say, and the food, it isn't a craving as such. It's more of a, you know what, I fancy crisps, rather than me where I used to say, no, I'm not having, I live on fruit, I'm not having them. I've relaxed myself into having them if I've wanted. The experience hasn't always been good, and so I haven't wanted them again. But yeah, so I haven't actually used it and sat down. But what you would do in that instance is that you would want to know, what is the feeling. So if you sat down for a second and felt the impulse that's underneath that craving, that would be the key. Are you with me? So you would feel this craving. Yeah, so you would feel the craving, and it would be saying, I can't, right, okay, so a Friday fast is perfect, isn't it? Because every time you go into a Friday fast, your mind is saying, it, you need to eat, you don't want to do this, and as soon as that comes up, you would, in an ideal world, and it isn't easy, because it's this process that you need, okay? It's not individual, these individual situations, it's the process, so that it's actually undoing that the whole what's underneath. But what you would do in that instance is you would sit down, if you could, but you would go inside, and you would ask yourself, what is the feeling that's behind this craving for this food? And that's, and you would go into that silence. And if I'm honest, if you didn't follow that feeling and go straight to the fridge or straight to the cupboard to get the food, that feeling would get stronger and stronger anyway. Okay, and then you would sit with that, and then go into that silence, and you would feel it, and then you would ask, where is that feeling in my body? And usually it's in the solar plexus or the tummy, but everybody's different, but that's usually where it is. And then you would focus your attention as best as you could, because the mind will be going crazy and wanting you to go to the fridge, and that feeling will be compulsive and wanting to drive you to do what eat what you would normally eat.
Right.
But you would stay with that as long as you could, and just go into that silence, into that listening, into that and just focus your mind on that feeling in your body. And in an ideal world, you'd stay for 5 to 10 minutes, and just and that energy will change. He says 5 to 10 minutes. I often do 5 to 10 minutes. If I can't do it at that particular time, which obviously if you're fasting and you're at work, it's going to be difficult to do that. But in an ideal world, you'd sit with that feeling as long as you could. If it was a time that was inappropriate for you to actually take that time out and actually sit with it, then that's when you would come home after work maybe and try and bring that feeling back up, to then obviously focus on it. Because like when I'm walking my dogs, I can't go into the silence, so I have to come home and then I focus on what what my dog was stressing me out about on the walk, and bring that feeling up
Would you
internally.
also ask the question, okay, so first you ask where's the feeling, and you wait until you find it, and then you find where it is in your body, and then would you ask when was the first time you had that feeling, or would that not apply?
Well, I would wait until that feeling in that particular moment, at that particular time. You would ask, when was the last time I felt that feeling? Okay. And just wait, because again, it just comes straight into it. The picture comes straight into your mind, and you think, oh my God, oh yeah, okay, I did. And then you go from there to ask again. And then you will find that it takes you back gradually. At first, when you're beginning, you sometimes can't go right the way back, but at the backbone of all of it, it all originates from either in the womb, or in the first few years. Yeah, when you weren't actually mentally, it was all emotional or vibrational, and it's probably all vibrational, but we feel it emotionally.
Okay, we have another question. Is there a difference between the presence process and not doing?
Not doing is talked about a lot in the presence process, so I would definitely say that my Fridays are not doing. So there's no external noise, it's just me and me, and it literally is me and me, because there is a battle that comes up, and my mind is wanting me, oh, you could just check your emails, oh, you could just do this, but what, one thing that I really did have experienced is the energy. Oh my gosh, rather than being scattered and checking emails and watching YouTubes and working and just doing, constant doing, I sit with myself. I just sit with myself and I meditate. I go into that quietness and that space all day, and the difference in energy, I am just buzzing with energy, because it's not scattered, and yeah, even though most of me doesn't want to do it.
I can relate. And did I hear you say, I'm pretty sure I did at the top, that it's a 10-week practice, if you will. The process is 10 weeks, right? You do it over 10 weeks. And then you said you take a 3-week break for integration time, right? And then if you want to go back, you can you can repeat it again. I think it's interesting to see. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say there's actually two processes. One, and they because he does it so that there's two levels to enter into it. So the first level is just reading the book like you would a novel. You just literally pick up the book and you start and you read it, and you read from front to back, and that's level one. And that's just and literally there's so many nuggets of it speaking to you on emotional and vibrational levels that he's put into this works, that just doing that, you will feel a difference in that. But when you're ready, there is an experiential process, and you're right, it's 10 weeks, and it generally lasts a bit longer, because you read, there's like half of the book is actually text that you read before the process. And then, so you generally, for me, this time, I probably spent 4 or 5 weeks actually just taking my time. I brought in the breathing process morning and evening, but I just took my time reading it. I didn't rush to go into the process. And then when I did get to the process, once I got to it in the book, I just started the process. And yeah, that is a 10-week experiential process, and you basically are given a conscious statement, conscious response statement, I think he calls them, at the beginning of each chapter, and that you use almost like a mantra, but not to repeat and repeat and repeat. But if your mind gets busy, it's something that you bring up, you just bring to your mind, and it, so and that is an activating statement. So it's doing something on an energetic level as well. And then you read the text. It's usually, there's like 3 or 4 pages of text, and he encourages you to read that every day. If you don't have time enough to read that every day for the course of the 7 days, so you're doing once a week for the course of the 7 days, you use that statement in your mind whenever your mind's busy, and just to bring you back, and then just do a couple of the breathing and just run through that, just to bring you back into presence. That's what you're trying to establish, is just this relationship with that presence, and being present, and living your life from there, obviously, is what we're ultimately aiming for. So you've got week 1, you've got the 10 weeks of going through. There's a conscious statement in each week, and then, like you say, you do your breathing twice a day, and you read the text. You need to read a little bit of text every day, but if you can't read the whole section, then read a page and then come back to it in the evening or something. But the more you read it, every time I read it, every day of the 7 days, you read it, and it's like a different text. It's like you didn't read it yesterday. So it's quite fascinating.
Beautiful, beautiful. I just wanted to open it up one more time if there are any questions. Arik, if you have a question, and then Karen, if you have any closing comments for us. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is really wonderful. I look forward to. And then we can also post in the group. There's 2 videos, and then there's one on the breathing process, and he has a website as well. So
I was going to say, and
Ravita,
and there's actually at least 3 seminars that are on different people's websites. So if anybody is really into it, we'll post the seminar. There's part 1 and part 2 to the one that I already posted, but there are another 4 or 5 different seminars. So if anybody's really into it, let me know, and I can send those to you individually.
Okay, we've got some questions here, Karen. Ravita, why don't you go first?
So can I ask how are you? I'm just completing the Lemon protocol. It's been 3 months.
And it's funny because looking at you now, you look like a different. Frederick posted something on the dry fasting group, and there was a really old picture of you, like 2.5 years ago, and it was like, oh my God, she's just, considering you're 2 years older. In the normal world, you'd be looking 2 years older, wouldn't you? But you're not. You look a different person to that person that was in that video on that. Yeah, it just made me smile. I thought, good for her.
Thank you very much. Well, we're learning all the time. So what you're saying is basically emotional processing, like to process, to try to get, what I understand is to try to get into this emotion, to try to sit with yourself and try to realize where you first felt it, and then what? Then how do you change? How do you process it? How do you change it?
Okay, so the intention is actually not to change it. The intention is to be with it. The intention is to become comfortable with these uncomfortable feelings, because since the beginning of time, or since we've become, since the beginning of when we became conscious of these feelings, all we've done is push them underneath or sedate them with foods, constant activity. So the whole point of the process is actually for you to become comfortable with everything that comes up in your experience, and that you have that presence within you, that you won't automatically, when something uncomfortable comes up inside of you, that you won't automatically, which we do at the moment, go to the point of trying to sedate it or just make yourself busy. So it's to become that emotion, and it's emotional strength. What you develop is emotional strength, that instead of burying it, run it, fight or flight, you know, the whole fight or flight type response, instead of burying it, you actually stand in it, you know, you stand with it, you allow it to be in you, because you can feel it, you will feel it. The more present you are, you'll feel it. But what you will notice, and it's not the intention, but what you will notice is that that presence, which is a being, it's not just sensations, it's actually a presence. It's actually, it's probably ultimately what people call God, or, you know, whatever people want to call it, but it's ultimately, that's what you're bringing forward, is that energy that moves mountains. And that's basically, by standing in that will integrate, and it will and it will transform your experience. Was that clear?
I'm trying to, so you're not supposed to release it, you're supposed to learn to live with it.
You're processing it, but see, there's no bad energy. We've named it, you know, we've named anger as, you know, it's society that's given it names, like anger and, you know, and sadness. Obviously we're uncomfortable, you know, in certain circumstances with obviously the sadness and the anger and the fear, obviously. And so, but it's just energy. You know, without the names, it's actually just energy, but it is uncomfortable to us. And so, and that uncomfortableness with those particular energies does disintegrate as you become more emotionally strong, because you just become that you're not afraid of it. It's like, bring it on, you know, this is something for me to learn, and something about me that I haven't been prepared to look at up until now. So yeah, so that's it isn't, but it will change with you putting that presence on it. It does change, but the intent shouldn't be to lose it. Do you know what I mean?
So you embrace it or something like that?
Yeah, it's integrating it. It's integrating it into your being, and the being is actually that presence that you bring forward. It actually, none of this, you know, none of the mental stuff and that is actually you. You are that presence that you bring forward. We've identified with the mental stuff, the physical stuff, and the emotional stuff, and so what's really you is this presence, which is doing all the integrating. And then your experience, which is the actual effects, which is your mental, physical, and the emotional reactions, that is what's transformed.
Okay, it's hard.
I know, it's a lot. Trust me, I'm 4 years into this book and it still blows me away.
It's actually the uncomfortability is our interpretation, or
You've got it. Absolutely. Is, well,
yeah, notice you never hear a child say that they're uncomfortable with crying or having an outburst. They feel their feelings fully, and then they're on to the next thing. The way I am experiencing it and interpreting it is it's teaching us how to feel again, right? He said there's somewhere in there, he says, feeling is healing. We think there's something to fix, but there's nothing to fix. There's something to be met, right? And then as Karen says, in the meeting, in the listening to it, in the allowing it to move through us, you know, because the only reason we have traumas, if you will, is that stuck energy, it's stuck emotion, they're stuck feelings. And so what a beautiful gift to us as adults to have this process to learn how to feel again. And then there's nothing to avoid, right? Because all of life is wonderful. Even what we call grief, right? That just speaks to the depth of love we had for a pet or a person. So why shouldn't we feel that? Why should we run from that? You know,
Yeah.
or just anger. Maybe it's telling us, hey, wait, you're crossing your own boundary or whatever, anyway.
And the uncomfortableness is the stuck energy. So you're actually, by bringing your presence onto that energy, you're actually allowing it to integrate, so it's no longer stuck. So the uncomfortableness does, or the extreme uncomfortableness, and the fact that it drives you, and underneath unconsciously to do things that you wouldn't choose to do if you were conscious of it doing that to you. Well, it just integrates, and it just changes. From my experience, it just changes your whole experience.
Because to be more specific, like when you're a child, you're not allowed to do a lot of things, and I don't know, you feel you're rejected, but actually it's your parents. It's not about you. It's about they have their own difficulties, and they project, just like you said, even from the womb. It's like you absorb your parents' traumas and they become part of you. And how do you get rid of it? And then you're angry at your parents because you feel they haven't raised you properly. And it's just so much misunderstanding. It's so much, this vicious circle, how do you snap out of it? Because your parents really love you and they had the best intentions for you, but there's so much misunderstanding and so much anger. And how do you
so that's all part of it. Revital, that is actually all part of it. That what your parents brought to you was actually the imprinting. And the beautiful thing is, your parents obviously weren't able to, this type of information wasn't necessarily, well, again, like I say, he did most of this like in the late 90s and brought this book into effect sort of the mid 2000, so like 2005 I think it was. So this wasn't available for our parents, so we are the fortunate ones to be able to come into this experience. Our parents have imprinted us as their parents imprinted them, and their parents before them imprinted them, but we're able to be the alchemists. We're actually able to turn whatever it is into gold, whatever alchemists turn into gold. But that's and that's the beauty of it, is, and that's what he said actually in part of that talk, was he said that it's either a curse or a, do you know what I mean? It's how you look at it. But actually, by having that imprinting, it gives you, if we didn't have that imprinting, we wouldn't be able to have this experience of going through, you wouldn't have the experience, you wouldn't be able to feel emotions in the way that we're going to be able to feel emotions by doing this process. And it's the whole pathway of awareness has been for, because we had the emotional first, well, with vibrational, then the emotional, then the mental, then the physical. Well, and now we retrace that. We retrace that journey back to obviously the emotional, which is the causative. And if we hadn't stopped the emotional at like 7 years of age, when we went to school and we learned, we started schooling and we left our emotional childhood behind to go into schooling. If we hadn't had that, we would never have obviously gone into the mental and then and then perfected the physical in the same way that we have, and had that relationship with the mental and the physical. We'd have never had that experience. So it's certainly, where he goes into his own experience, and when you look at a lot of his videos, you realize that he's able to experience, and obviously once we've got the emotional under wraps, it opens us up to the vibrational, which is and without the emotional, we wouldn't be able to feel the vibrational. So it's
well, you said something important here, Karen.
Okay.
You gave us the example of your dog, right? How it brought up like that fear for you, and then you were able to work through that thing that it did your childhood. So, Revital, this is a beautiful question that you ask here, because how to break the misunderstanding is you do whatever your work is, if you choose it to be this, right? And then you have a different experience with the parents because you heal that. And there are many cultures that say we do the work that we do. Maybe we come in with these wounds, it's imprinting, right? So we can do this work for our ancestors that this information was not available to them to do. Like each generation comes more enlightened than the last. And so we get to do this work for them. We took it on as it was ours, but we're so fortunate in this lifetime. We have so many different tools that tell us, no, it's not ours. It's not who we are, right? And that's what his work is saying. You're not who the mind tells you we are, right? We're so much more than that. And that is an intellectual, words only point to something, right? We have to feel that. And so he does invite us, because part of the feeling is that which we don't want to feel uncomfortable with, right? Many people also have a problem with joy or happiness, and then we sabotage that, right, to do trauma. And so to the degree that we're unwilling to feel unable or unavailable to the discomfortable feelings, we're also just as much unavailable to the joy and the happiness and the peace and whatever. So the beauty of this work is in teaching us how to feel. As Karen says, it alchemizes the traumas and the hurts, and then it also opens us up to a greater experience of how sacred this life is. So thank you for asking that powerful question.
100%.
Looks
And
like
the
Robbie
relationship
and
with our
Eric-
family,
What?
I was going to say, and the relationship with our family naturally changes as a result that you do internally. So it is fascinating.
Yes, yeah, I feel it too. You know, I'm becoming aware of things, and when I work on myself and change things within myself, it reflects on others. Of course, it all starts from you. I mean, it's all internal. It's not external, and people around you change as you change. It's amazing. You can see that. So.
Yeah. And in the book, he actually does, there's actually a guy who comes to him. His daughter has been institutionalized with PTSD or something like that, and as a result of him and his wife separating, well, his wife couldn't cope, so she allowed her to go into the institution and was on these heavy drugs, but this guy couldn't cope with it. He couldn't, so he went straight to the institution, took his daughter out, and then had this uncontrollable daughter at home. So he managed, lucky for him, he managed to contact Michael Brown, and he said, will you take the process through for my daughter? And he said, well, I can't do it for your daughter, but I can do it for you, which will affect your daughter. And there's a beautiful story in the book of week by week how his daughter just completely transforms. He's off the medication and he's like an angel.
That you said your dog changed as you changed your dog.
100%. Yeah, it was. And bearing in mind they're 11 years old, and I've struggled with that dog for the best part of 11 years, and for me to do that in the last month, it's been, I can't tell you the freedom that I feel just as a result of that. So yeah.
Wow, amazing. So if we change ourselves, it reflects on and everyone around us. So that's how we change others, by changing ourselves. Yeah, amazing. Also affects your pets and
everything in your environment, everything, like the wildlife. You suddenly notice that the wildlife are like doing dances in front of you. It's like, and birds come right up to your nose, it's like, oh my God.
I'm glad you said that, Carrie. If you guys notice, I keep looking away. I'm sitting on the back patio, and there's like bluebirds have been coming to visit, and like all these other birds. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I probably look really scattered, but they're like right there. You can't like not notice them. So thank you so much for your question. It looks like Robbie and Eric have a question as well.
Thank you for the
my pleasure.
Inspiration. Thank you.
Robbie and Eric, do you guys still have a question?
You need to introduce one or the other.
Well, they're both of their mics. There's Eric. There we go.
No, I didn't have a question. I just, towards the end of the interview, I just want Karen to tell us about her other projects, such as the course about dogs and other things. But let's let Ravi ask his question.
Okay.
Sorry, Alva, I was away. Hey, Karen, good to see you again.
Hello, and you.
My situation is, is all about fasting and extend the fasting. That's what these days, that's the only thing I'm focusing on. I don't have addictions to any food or cravings for anything like a salt, sugar. I don't have cravings at all. But there are two things. If I see a good food, I eat it. And I cannot resist, I eat it. And second thing is, I cook at home. And after my wife and daughter eats, if there is a remaining, I have a guilty feeling that the food is going waste. So I eat that. So any insight as to how to deal with these two scenarios? If I don't have these two feelings, then I can extend my fasting. I have no pain, no discomfort, nothing in fasting. I can go for 2 days, 3 days, I can go. But these two things really haunt me a lot.
Well, and I would say, Ravi, that it's consciousness. It's like in that moment, you're unconscious. So you're allowing reactivity, you're allowing your habitual reaction to that food. So there isn't any presence there. There isn't any presence. It's just an automatic food. This is what I do with food. And so that I would say it's all about developing that the more that conscious, that the presence, obviously, that it and obviously that book can help you without any shadow of a doubt. Or if you don't necessarily want to invest in the book, if you start doing that breathing practice twice a day, I am here now in this with that
breathing. Okay.
Yeah, and the reason it's so loud is because it's like, say, if you quieten it down, before you know it, you're asleep. So you use that to keep you present, and you do that twice a day for 15 minutes a day. You will notice within a month how much different that experience, and that's what you need in that moment. You need when that habitual reaction is coming up in your experience, you need that presence to think, oh my God, there it is again, and no, I don't want to eat that. But in the meantime, you're like a little robot, but in your head, you're not necessarily aware, and so of course it's a natural reaction to yeah. So it's easy. The answer is easy, but but it's not simple to do.
Exactly. Yeah. So the follow it is really hard. Yeah.
But yeah, do that 15 minutes twice a day, and I bet you'll notice a difference within about a month.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was wonderful. I don't see any other questions for you, so I'm going to turn it over to Arik. We appreciate you so much for sharing this with us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, Karen, absolutely. Thank you so much. It was enlightening. We have learned lots of new things, lots of even people who are into mindfulness and meditation. I think it clarified many aspects. So thank you so much.
And it's just touched on the surface. So like, say, if it's something of interest, we could definitely, we haven't even touched on any of the process. So if it's of interest to people, we can definitely do another one with a bit more detail on there. So
yeah, by the way, does it give you the tools to act to conduct some kind of an inner process while you are being in the situation, like in real life, let's say in the supermarket or some other place where something annoys you? Does it give you the tools to deal with that situation right away?
Yeah, so what I'd say is the 15-minute breathing process twice a day is designed to bring you into this present, away from the mental chatter, into this present moment. And obviously the more you do that, and it's cumulative, so for every 15 minutes that you do, and obviously if you've got more time and you've got the and you've got the desire, then obviously do it more often. If you've got more time during the day, do it at lunchtime as well, and it will and that will change your experience of that middle of the day part. It will bring you into the present, and like I say, the presence that you generate in those 15 minutes is cumulative, so it just more and more time you spend present instead of off into the, you know, in the unconscious world of our mental chatter,
Right.
that's with you, and you develop that, and that stays with you. And then, like I say, throughout the process, he has these statements that you say that are mental statements. One of them, my one at the moment, is I am innocent. That's the statement. And so whenever I'm in mental chatter throughout the day, when I remember that statement, brings me back into the presence. And again, it's got energetic connotations to it, according to Michael. So the more often you say it, the better it is. But yeah, I would, you know, when you're in the middle, if you can become, like I say, that's the problem. When you're in the supermarket and that anger comes up, you're not present. It's a bit like Ravi with when he grabs for that food, it's not present. So it's actually that, you know, that presence that you need to bring into those moments. And
Right.
like I say, that the more you do it, the more that will be in your experience.
Absolutely.
And then just reading the book, that, you know, just reading the book, it's totally mind changing. It literally, and that's what it's designed to. It's designed for you to come out of the mind and into that present moment. And so just reading the book will do that, and listening to the seminars, obviously, as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, guys, so before we wrap it up, do you have any more questions? You have the last chance now, at least for today, to ask Karen questions. Do you have anything? You're welcome to unmute yourself. And if not, then Karen, so please tell us about your activities. I know that you have launched a new course recently. Maybe you provide some other services, just whatever feels right to you, just share with us so that people can contact you and get help.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, so my last talk was about the pets, and that really is my specialty. Is I transition the pets, mainly dogs, but cats as well. I transition pets from you know, a standard commercial type diet into a homemade raw food that they thrive on. So so that's my speciality. And I've got a course, and I do one-on-one with people for that. And then yeah, and then if anyone wants any help with the presence process at any stage, if they want any more information, feel free to message me.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, guys, so we'll put all the contact details of Karen below this video. Feel free to contact her and get help. And yeah, so thank you so much, Karen. It was enlightening and wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
And thank you to Alva as well for being such
yes,
a great
yes,
hostess.
Alva. Thank you so much for hosting. Your questions were really, you know, thoughtful, and your presence was there, and you did it in a beautiful way. Thank you so much.
Really lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you all next week.
Okay, guys. See you next Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.